We're live.
Yes, we're live. We are live.
We are here.
We're here with Lauren KASHAN. She is back for her second time on the Chocolate Croissants podcast. She is the vocalist of the band Sharptooth, who has a new record coming out just in a week, 2 weeks?
Yeah, like a little over a week.
Hell yeah.
Shit.
I have July 10th in my on my Jordan Goodman stationery that I just got. And I think this might be the most traditional thing we've ever done, as far as we have a guest right at the time that they are promoting something of value in their artistic lives. So this worked out well.
That is perfect. Hey, I wanted to say, hey, Lauren, I highly doubt you remember, but we didn't meet, but we made eggs together one morning on the Vans Warped Tour. You were. I mean, it was really early. It was like 7:30, 8 in the morning. I don't even remember what city it was. I was there because of Band Happy, or TEI, the Entertainment Institute, and I was waiting in line. You were right in front of me making eggs on the little stove, and then I think it was like a dual stove, and we were sharing it, and I was like, oh man, this girl's gonna totally think that I'm trying to hog her space, and she definitely does not want me breathing on her all close to her.
Oh my god!
I felt bad, but then anyway. So then, long story short, it was you. So we haven't really talked. We haven't talked before, but we shared a breakfast moment. Yep.
On Warped Tour, no less.
On Warped Tour.
Pretty great.
Yeah.
That's great. So you guys don't know each other as just being Jews from Baltimore County interested in music.
Actually,
we don't know.
No, which is kind of funny. Yeah, I feel like our paths should have crossed before now, and they just for whatever reason haven't.
Yeah, it's straight. Well, they did just
at Warped Tour.
At Warped Tour.
At the Omelet Station.
I want to say it was in. I want to say it was either in. It could have been in California, or it could have been in Texas, perhaps. But were you working for a company or an activation there, or were you guys actually performing at that point?
Yeah, we were on the tour. This was 2018. We were on the whole thing.
Okay, so it was some random spot, and I don't remember where. But anyway,
that's funny. I don't either, because the days really blur together on that run. Oh, man.
So look, I think referencing Warped Tour is a nice start, because Lauren, you came to my apartment a few years ago, and it was me, Justin, and you having this conversation. Matt, unfortunately, couldn't make it there. And at that point in your career with Sharptooth, it felt like, at least to me, things were really starting at a more national, maybe international trajectory for you guys. You may have even told us that you had secured the full Warped Tour, but I don't know if you were able to publicly announce it yet. I forget.
I don't think that we had announced that yet. I feel like I remember this. And we knew, but it wasn't public yet. So.
Right. So, I mean, since the last time that our audience heard you chat with us publicly like this, things changed a lot for your band. You did the full Warped Tour. Justin and I were lucky enough to be able to stop by our local date, specifically to watch you perform that set. And it was
so nice. Thank
fucking
you.
amazing. Your parents were there too. It was great.
Yeah, I was there to support the parents.
Frankly, they needed the support probably more than me. So
it was incredible. I got to kind of stand and chat with them right after your set, as they're watching dozens of people form a line to meet you.
Yeah,
that must have been a trip for them.
Line, that day was brutal too. That was a 2-hour signing line, and I was dying. I was literally at one point just hiding under the merch table, and our people are just bringing me food and stuff, because I was I just need a break from talking to fucking 500 teenagers. which they are my favorite. But oh God, when you have to do it for 2 hours straight, you're like, I just need to just sit down, like have a sandwich or something.
Well, look, it makes sense why that would be the opportune time to have a meet and greet of sorts, given that you had literally just performed. You are competing with the attention of dozens of other bands. So at no other point throughout the day is there going to be as palpable of an emotional connection with the audience there as right after the performance. It's an opportune time to take a picture. It's the time where someone is most willing to perhaps buy an album or a T-shirt or something like that. So I'm curious, like, as a performer, and you are someone, even if it's 30 minutes, I mean, you like lay it all out there, more so than, I'd put you up there, honestly, with any other musical performer that I've ever seen in my life, quite frankly, as someone who shows up and gives their full energy. What is that an opportune time for you, or do you feel like it would be more beneficial for you to like decompress right after?
I like having a little bit of time to decompress is helpful, like even if it's like 15 or 20 minutes. But yeah, I mean, when people are excited about the things that you're talking about, sometimes you have to put like some of your personal comfort like on hold for a couple minutes, especially with like some of the content that we talk about and like it's specificity to like young people and vulnerable populations and marginalized people. When these people are feeling empowered, like that's what like the best time to be engaging with them and continuing to help you like, okay, like you feel like this way about this, like now we're gonna like continue to build on that instead of letting it valley. So
I feel like
it's not always easy. But
I feel like it might even be a great time where you've just given everything that was in you, for all the messages that you wanted to convey in that set. And now it's actually a great time for you to just be able to listen to, your fan base come really not like give it to you, but like give all the energy that they have in them that's now been, riled up from you. Now you can listen to them, and maybe there is a little bit of a break, and correct me if I'm wrong, where they might come up just fired up and ready to go. And you're like, cool, I'm just going to like sit back and listen to you now since, we can reciprocate it this way.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I often have to like remind people like I apologize if I'm like a little less emotive like right after a set, because I literally just screamed for 45 minutes or whatever. So I'm like, you have to bear with me, like I gotta kind of rebuild a little bit. But yeah, people are most of the time they don't care. They're just stoked and happy to be there and excited to talk. So yeah, they're pretty understanding.
So decompression at the end of a set, that's one thing. I'm also curious how you prepare right before a set, just because, you have set a standard for a Sharptooth show. For me, your songs are cool. The band is great, but you are a selling point uniquely as yourself and the energy that you bring. So I'm curious, like, do you have a routine? Have there been moments, I'm sure there have been, where for whatever the reasons of circumstances, you just have to like audition like onto the stage and into that role? What have you found that you need most in order to make that transition in a way that feels good for you?
It's usually pretty quick for me. Like I can snap into that like pretty quickly. I used to have like a pretty extensive warm-up routine. I don't do that extensive of a warm-up routine anymore because then it starts to be a little bit counterproductive. But like just like a couple minutes of just like gentle like vocal vibrations and stuff is usually all I'll do. And basically I do it's a thing that we jokingly say, turn it off, turn it back on again, where I just like will try to make the sound that like I want to primarily be making. So it like literally will sound like I'm just somewhere like throwing up. it's like just me making awful noises until I can figure out exactly how the sound I want to make feels. And then I'm like, okay, I have my placement. I'm good now. It works. Let's go. Like, that's kind of how it is for me nowadays. It's a lot less about preparing my voice and doing a whole thing than being like, I've done so much of that work already that for me, it is more productive to go, okay, where is my sound? Okay. Oh, it's here. All right. We got it. Let's go. And then putting more of that, like, muscle power into the actual performance nowadays for me.
Vocal warm-ups on tour are hilarious. When you're touring with other bands and you get to hear how like the different vocalists do their thing.
Yeah.
The weird, not to stray too far, but I wanted to say the weirdest I've ever heard. Have you heard of the band the Shining from Norway ever?
I've heard the name. The name is familiar.
It's like heavy progressive industrial, I guess, but this singer does some of the weirdest shit. His name's Jürgen. He's an awesome guy.
Jürgen, that's a good name.
Yeah, but when he is doing his warm-ups, everybody started following him around and making fun of him and, jokingly all together, but everybody's doing it together. So do you have do your bandmates kind of, are they used to it now when you do it? Or,
yeah. Yeah, I mean, they would give me, they would, heckle me about, the silly noises I, would make, too, and stuff. But it was, they were pretty gentle about it so that I never got to a point of actually really feeling self-conscious. They're very nice in that way. They're like, Lauren's sensitive. Let's not take the piss out of her too hard. But,
good.
Yeah, I do, the Melissa Cross, voice warm-ups, and I feel like almost every vocalist who's ever lived has heard somebody do the hee-hees and the ha-has and all those.
Yep.
The classic Melissa Cross stuff. So yeah, I swear by her. She's the best.
Yeah, she's great. She's worked with a lot of people. Obviously, everybody in the freaking rock world either knows her or has worked with her. I remember the first time my wife came on the tour bus. It was before a show. We weren't married yet, and we're sitting in the front lounge, and she hears this high pitched screaming from the back of the bus, and it sounds like someone getting murdered. And she's looking around what the hell is that? And I had to think about it for a second because I'm used to hearing it so much. I was oh, that's just Spencer. He's in the back warming up, and he does the same thing that you do. I mean, he does the warm-ups too, but every night he tries to find his the barometer of how he's feeling, and it's crazy. His physical health, his amount of sleep, it changes where he grabs that tone from per day. And on tour, it's just really hard to be consistent. So I get it.
It's virtually impossible to be consistent. Any amount of consistency that you can find on the road is it's hard won. And sleep affects me so profoundly that all just super resonates with me.
So I'm curious because you mentioned the consistency. It might be similar to pro wrestlers. So pro wrestlers who are used to bumping in the ring week in and week out. They kind of develop a groove, and if they take time off for months at a time, many have told me that it takes a little bit of time to adjust to that again. I'm assuming you haven't performed and really screamed much in the past few months after going hard for a couple years. So I'm curious, do you feel like this is healthy for your voice right now? When you start doing it again, will it be hard to adjust?
I'm sure. I am pretty sure that there will definitely be a little bit of a learning curve and getting back into it. Because we haven't played since last year. We haven't played any shows since last year because we were gearing up for a record release. So. Yeah, that's going to be interesting. I super miss performing. And I whether that is with Sharptooth or just doing karaoke and shit like that. Like I miss singing a lot. I've had to like, my kind of thing that I'll do sometimes is I'll just like leave the house and go drive around and sing in the car, so that I can be doing something with my voice. The band has been talking about doing maybe like a remote live thing. So I'm like, oh shit, I totally have to like start. I feel like I'm going to have to, before that, spend a couple of weeks honing back in on my sound. So it'll be a challenge, but it's the challenge that I think everybody's going through. So I don't know. I don't have any specific poor me feeling.
I want to piggyback off of Jordan's wrestling comment. There's actually, a term. I'm a big mixed martial arts fan, boxing fan, and a lot of times people talk about ring rust. There's you've been off for say 6 months or a year. You haven't fought. You haven't had that up, and in that you might show up and feel like, oh, wait a second. It might take some time for me to get like acclimated or reacclimated to what this actually feels like. That first punch in the face might be the one that kind of wakes you up, right? There's a wonderful champion fighter. His name is Dominic Cruz, and I would definitely say go check him out as we're making this transition back to whenever we get to that point where shows become a thing, whether it's virtual or live. Dominic Cruz has spoken at length about this ring rust thing because he's had injury after injury after injury, yet he always tends to come back either as good, if not a better version of himself, and He's the only one I hear consistently talk about that ring rust is not a real thing, that it's all up here. It's all in the mind. You have to flip that switch. You have to turn it off. You have to have all this positive self-talk. And as soon as you show up, you can kind of gauge your own barometer, as we're kind of talking about, and you just find your footing. You just go for it. And if there's like any person I could reference that I think would give, for any of us that are going to go out and potentially perform or hopefully perform, sometimes
or hit people in the face.
Or hit people in the face, right? For sure, right? Coming off a long injury, you're going to go hit someone in the face. Dominic Cruz is a guy to go look up and listen to him talk about this stuff, because I think he most eloquently puts all of this into perspective. And of course, it's going to be potentially different for different people, right? But I think we can have that kind of mental reel going. That we can get over this stuff if we just believe that it's not going to actually happen. It's all going to be, as we knew it before.
That's interesting. If you have like a specific conversation, feel free to post it in the Facebook group. Lauren, when you get in the car and you have your own like personal karaoke session, do you have like a go-to song or even like set list for yourself?
I've been like, I usually sing a ton-ish. I do have like a short list of show tunes that are like my go-tos if I like want to, especially if I want, because like sometimes you're like having a bad day, like feeling crappy, feeling like depressed and isolated and shit because the world is a dumpster fire. And I have the stuff that like are like my go-tos because I know that singing it will make me like feel good about myself and feel confident and like remind me, hey, I'm really good at that thing. Like even though I can't really do it right now, I'm still good at it. It makes me happy. So that's kind of like my go-to. I've just been recently just like getting in the car and singing, and the songs like that have just been making me feel good in general. A lot of Kesha recently.
Matt too.
She put out a record either right at the beginning of 2020 or the end of 2019. High Road, it's a great record. Anyway, we don't deserve Kesha, frankly.
Have you seen
if
her
you're not
live?
on the Kesha? No, we were supposed to. We had tickets for May 31st, and that has come and gone, obviously. So that was really upsetting.
I heard her production is really good. Was that the tour with Big Frida, or was that a previous tour?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, it was the tour with Big Frida.
Big Frida's awesome. I saw Big Frida at the Auto Bar with like 50 people years ago. It was so much fun.
That's awesome. That's so sick.
Yeah.
We're super looking forward to that.
I'm curious if potentially the comeback tour, the comeback Sharptooth tour, could there be some inspiration drawn from a Kesha set with like the glitz and the glitter? It almost looks like there's like paint everywhere. It's like a mess. Like I feel like
Well,
you
have
know,
you seen our music video?
I have, yeah. I'm curious.
Yeah.
Like, can we bring like the Kesha vibe to the Sharptooth vibe live on this next tour?
Sure. I feel like I do. I definitely do some of that. Like I mean, I have like a bit that I do when we play that like I will like crawl on like I'll find whatever fucking bar is in the venue and crawl on it and like I like getting over the last specifically the last year, my goal has to be to make our a Sharptooth set, a metalcore set as like I've been wanting to like infuse it with that like overly sexual, gritty, like devil may care vibe, like definitely like very Kesha evocative. I do like ridiculous. I like, oh my God, like we have like breaks in songs where like I'll like fucking like twerk and, and like laying on bars and like just like crawling and stepping on guys' heads and stuff. Yeah, it's like super a vibe. I've been really trying to like, I'm like, okay, how far can I push metalcore in like that direction?
I like that, and I watched your new video multiple times. I love it, and I mean also just the no pun intended, the content of the song, the lyrics. It is very much satire in a sense, where you're having these more, especially for a really aggressive band like yours, you have these glossy visual aesthetics, and obviously referencing other pop music videos. But it kind of works too. I like the idea, like unironically, of maybe a pastiche, if you will, of different visual aesthetics, blended with such an aggressive energy and like just audio vibe that you guys produce as a live band. I think there's a lot to play within that hasn't been done, to your point.
And that's one of the reasons I'm so into that. Because one, it's like that energy is so core to who I am as a person. And in relation to that, I have felt compelled to and pressured to like minimize that, my expression of that energy, or mitigate that. Because it's like, I mean, the fucking hardcore metalcore scene are like the most aggressively masculine like places in music, I think. And it makes people really uncomfortable when you come into that space and behave in a way that is almost performatively like sexual or feminine. Like it challenges people. And that's kind of what we're all about.
Well, you have a unique opportunity to do it. You definitely have I mean, being a female-fronted band like this, in this scene, you have a unique opportunity to change minds in that regard and to challenge because you're right. Like, that scene is pretty aggressive, for lack of better terminology. So
it's very broy, like, just like that, like, boys club type of vibe. And I mean, I felt for a long time, and not even necessarily consciously, but occasionally consciously, definitely subconsciously, that like if I expressed more feminine, if I wore clothes that were like that would like lend to be like more sexual, that I wouldn't be taken seriously. So I like didn't. I had like a uniform for a really long time. I like literally only would wear black tank top, black jeans, black boots to shows, literally nothing else. I remember I got like a reaction from a venue owner when I wore like leggings for the first time at a show. He made a comment about like how I looked basically like too sexy. And it's like they're just fucking leggings.
It's really weird.
And this was like 3 or 4 years ago. Like that's like this is a common thing. It's so insidious, but it's like subtle too. It's not like people are like coming up to you if you're wearing like something that is like pink on it and being like, oh, like, I don't know, saying like homophobic shit. It's not that kind of toxic masculinity. It's a lot more subtle now. which makes it a lot easier, I think, for a lot of people to ignore or pretend that it's not an issue, which I think is what a lot of people do. That's kind of the problem we're dealing with right now in the world.
Yeah,
I could see some ignorant people even trying to call you out for being hypocritical, thinking, oh, Lauren is this like pro-feminist artist, and now she's like sexualizing or objectifying like her physicality, when in fact, you could just be fucking claiming it as your own.
Exactly. And that is kind of my point. I think that I'm pretty sure that if you're somebody who like equates like feminism with needing to, I don't know, with like needing to present butch or something, or like I've definitely had like seen some criticism of people who claim like to be feminist, but then present super feminine, which seems counterintuitive to me. But there's that like, there's kind of like some old stereotypes that people still kind of lean into, that like, oh, the feminists are just like that. They're like the prude, crotchety lesbians. Like, nah, like those are the feminists, and it's not a fucking thing.
Do you feel some sense of responsibility? Not that it is your responsibility, but given that there are so few women in the position you're in, do you feel this sense, maybe just from others or even internally from yourself, that you just are now representative of all women in an aggressive genre of music?
I never ever want to say that I like represent everybody, which is why like my broken record soapbox of mine is that we need more representation. We need more representation, because I literally can't speak for all women, because not all women are like me. We're all like super different and unique. That would be like, I don't know, like going, like just reaching into a hat and pulling out a name of a band that's all men and being like, they speak for all men. And it's like, no, and I understand that it's different because I'm being a little bit more intentional in the content that we're writing, and in that we are very like outwardly trying to make a like diverse space, and that's kind of like the point of a lot of things that we say and do. But yeah, I would never ever claim to speak for all women, nor do I want to. I just want more people playing heavy music, so that like everybody feels like they have their like people to look up to. I also don't ever want people to just be like, that's it. There's the one band with a woman in it that I listen to. Like, fuck that shit. Like, no. I don't ever want to be that. If anything, I just want to be somebody's gateway band into heavy music. I think that's probably, and like, there's a lot of like, I don't know, there's a little bit of scoffing that people do at being considered a quote unquote gateway band, but I think that's the biggest compliment that you could do, is that you were able to like convince somebody who normally wouldn't have listened to this type of music that you're worth listening to. Like, that's so cool.
Right, and then you'll always be remembered as the band that got them into a genre. I mean, that's actually a very serious badge of honor to wear, in terms of exposing people to a style of any style. You know, like think about even just other creative outlets. Like, what was your first pair of shoes? I don't, like you'll always remember like shit like that. Yeah, which is good. And I just wanted to say too, I mean, you shouldn't have to represent every woman in a band out there in heavy music. You should be doing what you feel is right for the content that you're writing, and then also for how you want to present yourself. But what I liked about what you said was too, it's like you were suppressing something that you were naturally, and you're kind of done with that. And if there's ever a time to be done with that, it's now. Why, why, who gives a fuck, And it's interesting too. I mean, I don't know how it's going to play out, but I think the more authentic you are in that regard, the more you're going to separate yourself from the pack in a good way. And over the next 2 years, as we see how this industry unfolds, there's going to be, I think, more competition in some ways for like everybody wanting to get back out there. Who's going to accept the bids from the promoters? Who's going to be able to get on the tours? What bands want to take other bands out? And I think there's something to be said for having an edge that is also authentic. And you should absolutely ride that wave as much as you can, not only for yourself, but I also think to really create more eyes and buzz about the band. I don't know if you thought about it that way, but I don't know.
It's funny because I do like the more I guess the best way to explain it is that every time I open up a little bit more and I put a little bit more of those things that I had repressed, like into my daily expression, into my stage performance, into like the content of the songs that I'm writing about, the feedback is always extremely overwhelmingly positive. So like I've really only had like motivation. You'll get like weird comments, like obviously, like for example, like about like the guy who like had something to say about the fact that I was like wearing leggings or whatever. You're always gonna get people who are gonna say stuff like that. But at the end of the day, like how many of those people are there versus how many of the people who look at something you're doing and go, oh, I identify with this. Oh, like this is for me. Oh, they're talking about like things that matter to me, that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's like proven very successful for me. I haven't really thought about it in those exact terms, but like in you saying that, I'm like, yeah, that's like totally checked out. That makes so much sense for everything that's like happened, especially in the last like 2 years. So,
but if you think about, sorry, Matt, if you think about us as artists when we were younger, it's usually those quote gateway bands. Those are the ones that we emulate at first when we're trying to find our point of view and our tone or voice or whatever word you want to use. And a lot of people that are creative never really get past that point. You often just take from your influences and maybe slightly riff off that. But I think the work of any creative, the work of any artist, whether you're writing songs or writing poetry or painting pictures, is to like continuously like chisel out your truth. And the more you do it with intention, the more honest and truthful your expression becomes. And I think the greatest artists of our times, the most enduring artists of our times, whether it's music or people who speak publicly, are the ones that you think of them and you can like hear them, or you could see the work, or you could see, it's like because it's so uniquely them. And not only as artists, I think that's just the point of all human beings, is to continuously keep carving out your own truth, which evolves and changes over time. But at least for me, the North Star is how do I get closer to being more honest with myself so I can be more honest with the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm here for all of that. It's fun. I think that was why, like, at least with this record, like this was just some of the most like gut level, like having to get like super honest with myself writing that I've ever done, and that was extremely challenging. So
I'm curious with the new record coming out. The content of the new record, how much of the content do you have these maybe larger conversations with the whole band involved as you're coming up with content for this?
Not a ton. I'm pretty fortunate in that the rest of the band pretty much just like trusts me with like the writing. They're like, it's gonna be kick-ass and it's gonna be cooler than anything we came up with. So that's like, they trust me with that. Just like I trust them with like coming up with like really gnarly like riffs, like, and so it works out. There will be times like, especially like I'll get excited about like a song, and I remember when I first came up with like some of the lyrics for Say Nothing. And I got so excited about it. And so I was like showing the band and stuff, and they were getting excited about it too. I think the fact that we have so many people in the band, like everybody in this band cares so much about like our purpose and like about our potential as not only musicians, but as activists, in our position. So like, they're pretty like on board with literally anything that I would say. We're all very ideologically similar, if not the same. So,
what's your mindset going into the release of an album in which you can't tour, and especially for a band like you guys? I mean, touring is the lifeblood of momentum. You know, connecting to your fans and you know, keeping the energy sustained, supporting recorded music. Is this something that you guys are continually talking about and iterating, like what between yourselves or the label or your representation, or are you just letting the process play itself out? Like, where's your head with that?
Well, so originally we were slated for a May release, and then we ended up pushing it back to July because we were like, well, the world's going to hell. May's probably not going to be a thing. Maybe it'll be back open in July. We had a tour booked. And we'd waited a really long time for the right tour. We'd gotten other offers that I was like, this is not conducive to who this band is and our message and our fan base. And I will no longer do tours that are not like on brand for us. I'm not going out with bands that don't give a shit. I'm not going out on tours where I'm the only fucking woman in any of the bands. I'm not doing any of that anymore. I did that for a while because I thought that was the right thing to do and to like be open-minded. No, I'm done being open-minded. We're going out with people who mirror our content and our values, and that's that. And I'm not discussing it with people anymore. So it was really frustrating because we were like, fine, we waited forever. I mean, we finished this record back like last March. So we waited forever to find the right thing. And then we were like, cool, we have to wait a year and a half, but we're going to put it out on the right tour. And now that's obviously not happening anymore because it is July and, music venues are so not a thing right now. So I don't know what my mindset is. I'm trying not to have any expectations, frankly. Which sucks and like feels super anticlimactic for a thing that I put that much work into. But like, what am I going to do? I can get upset about it, and I have gotten upset about it. But for me, putting mental energy into those upset feelings isn't productive. So I'm basically just trying to like use this time to kind of organize my life in a way that like when I am able to start touring again, it will be easier, better for me. I'm working on getting a job in like programming so that like when I am on the road, I will get to still be working and stuff like that. So it's a balance of trying to not think about it too much and then just trying to focus on everything else. And I'm just trying not to put too much like weight on it, and I think people will like it, and that's what more can I ask for? Like, I'd never expected to be putting out anything on a record label anyway. So anything I do get to do is kind of a bonus. Like,
are you guys self-releasing this one, or is it putting out on a label?
Yeah, it's on Pure Noise. We're signed to Pure Noise.
Okay.
So the fact that I'm even getting to do that is cool. Yeah. So at the end of the day, it's fine. It's whatever. Of course, it's not ideal, but I have no control over any of this anymore. So.
Exactly. Well, and so that my question that I had was kind of what have you been doing with your time currently? You sort of answered that by getting into programming, which is cool. I don't know if that's something you've been doing for a while or if that's a new thing, but how have you sort of adapted schedule-wise, day-to-day basis, in terms of work, in terms of, just what you're doing, from the time you wake up and go to sleep? How have you sort of had to look at this whole situation and say, okay, here's a new norm. This is what I'm doing?
It's been really challenging because, I just moved to Boston about a year ago, and we've toured a lot in that year, so I haven't been really looking for work in the city. So my background is in zoology, and I've been basically looking for zoo jobs here. The zoo industry is the most competitive industry in the universe, basically, because everyone wants to play with animals, and nobody wants to pay you to do that. Right. So finding jobs in my industry is extremely hard. And I was basically just kind of submitting applications to zoos and stuff when all of this started happening. And my day-to-day job, I built up actually a really good dog training and dog walking business and really awesome clients. And it was getting super lucrative, and I was having a ton of fun with it. And I was if I don't find a zoo thing, this is fine for right now. But then COVID happened, and going to people's houses and touching their things is not a good idea. So also was just flat out not allowed for a long time. So there went that, which was really disappointing, because I really loved getting up and going to see all my dogs every day. That was just awesome. So I had been doing programming, very much as a casual hobby. I have a circuit board called a circuit playground that I would program to do little things. And my boyfriend does a lot of programming work for his art. And I have a lot of friends who work in programming and coding and development. So I'm very adjacent to that world. And when all of this happened, I was you know what? I think I'm going to take a class on Python, which is a coding language, and see if, I have nothing to do anymore right now. So let's try that. And I took the class, and I got a 99% and was oh, this is great. I love this. And I'm kind of good at it. Maybe I could actually make money doing this thing. And so I hit up my friend Kayla, who programs robots and teaches them to recognize objects. And she was there's this coding school in Boston, really good reputation. They're called Launch Academy. She was you should look into it. And I applied and interviewed and got in. So I actually I started classes as of 2 weeks ago, and by the end of November, by the end of the year, I will have graduated and should hopefully have a job. It's a very intensive, very fast-paced program.
That's really badass. And is it mainly focused on is it robotics, or is it a different what language is it, or what's the focus of it, I should say?
So right now, basically, the way the school works is their curriculum actually changes every semester. I think they do 3 or 4 semesters a year. But basically, they reach out to all of the local tech companies, and Boston's a huge tech city, and they go, hey, so what are you looking for in your entry-level programmers that you're going to need for the coming year? And they change their curriculum to meet the needs of all of the local tech companies, so that they literally then just take you and farm you out to them, which is great because it's you immediately have a job. So it varies from every semester. Right now, I'm working in JavaScript. And I know that we're supposed to be working in Ruby on Rails. Mm-hmm. From my understanding, they are all what's known as object-oriented programming languages. So it's you're telling a thing to do a thing, or putting things in things, that kind of stuff. And JavaScript is a lot of web-based applications, so app development, website development. I'm really into data analytics and statistics, statistical analysis, to extrapolate from that things about human behavior. Super into that, so I'm hoping at some point to be able to land somewhere in that kind of field. Data mining is really, really interesting to me. I'm sure that people have opinions about that, but think it's really cool the things that you can learn just about human behavior, because that is a deep, deep interest of mine, is human behavior and psychology. So
I was
anything
really,
where I'm getting to.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
You're fine. No, you're fine. But I was just saying that, like, anything where I'm getting to interface with people and getting to do the fun problem-solving parts of, like, coding, as long as I'm getting to do that, I'm happy.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I was going to say, it's like, I remember listening to a podcast about Stitch Fix, the company, and they were talking about how, they have obviously some clothing designers and people that pick different brands to use, but the majority of their hires, and it's like hundreds of people, it's all data analysts that study the behaviors of people and what clothing they choose, and for different sizes and different shapes, and male or female and different ages, and it's like just constant algorithmic data that is helping them hone how to pick clothing to send to one person and all the people on a month-to-month basis. And it was just interesting to hear how much of their funding and how much of their budget goes towards those kinds of hires. And it makes sense, obviously. And I think it's the key to understanding metrics of your business and where it's going is awesome. And my mind doesn't work that way per se, but those are the people that literally make all the difference in whether a business succeeds and ultimately whether the consumer is happy in that sense too. But it sounds like the program you're in is like almost like an incubator for individuals as opposed to what might traditionally be like for companies, like how a young startup can get to this incubator and they can network with others and then they can find clients or grow their office or whatever it may be. It sounds like that is exactly what the program you're in now, but it's for people that are trying to do this individually.
It's really cool too, the way that they do it, because the first part it's like pretty relaxed pace. That's what we're at right now, and it's all online, and they release like a little bit of new content every day, and you work on it. And then July we go to like part-time online classes, as opposed to like you just get an assignment or whatever. So it's like 25 hours a week part-time classes until the end of the summer, and then in September it starts like full-time, intensive, immersive, like you go to their facility every single day. And it's about 70 hours a week, 70 to 80. It is hardcore. They're like, it is not like, this is not a relaxed pace thing. This is designed to like put together some like a web developer or a program developer like in 3 months so that you can then just go into a work environment and be able to assimilate. I'm terrified.
Well, I'm really excited for you, Lauren, for a few reasons, but I want to share one, and I think you'd be a great example for people watching or listening to this, and it's something that I've talked about in the past. Look, I can imagine that when you have your first interview with the company or whomever it is for this type of work, and they start asking like, tell us about your life. And for you to say like, I have this education and work experience like with reptiles and engaging the public through education and things like that with reptiles. And by the way, I've done like the whole Warped Tour and just put out like my last record on this record label. Like no one can match. And that's just to finish, that says so much about your personality. Because most people have linear routes in life where it's you finish grade school and then you get the degree in whatever it may be, and that's kind of the trajectory. I think most people would be a fool not to see the unique value in someone like you who has this not only entrepreneurial journey in different respects, but this this journey of creativity and commerce, the mix of that. You think differently than most like quote unquote analytical people do because you are creative and are a creative as a profession for many years now. And you've traveled You learned what it's like to work with different people every day in different environments. To me, you just seem so well-rounded relative to the next 10 people in line on paper that I'm very curious to see what this next step will be like for you, given who you present as a potential applicant.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a running joke because, like, obviously, like, I moved to Boston about a year ago, so I've met a lot of new people and stuff. And I'm just kind of at the point where, like, people will be like, oh, like, who are you? What do you do? And I'm like, okay, I sound made up, but I am an ex-opera singer who screams in a metalcore band and who trains crocodiles, and now I'm learning programming. I sound fucking made up. But I think that's hilarious.
It would be so badass if you could train a dog and a crocodile to be best friends.
What?
She's thinking.
I think if you start young, I think that you totally could, actually.
Yeah. I
think you totally could.
It'd be such an interesting experience. As long I would think that you would have to keep, well, both of them, depending on the breed of dog, you probably have to keep them both very well fed in order for that to work.
Yeah. Yeah. And give them, like, motivation that are more motivating than either of the other one is to the other one. Yeah, that would be really challenging. That would be interesting, though.
I see the wheels turning.
Yeah. Well, like, I have a Savannah monitor, Vinny, who's a big lizard. And he, like, behaves in ways that are very strange for a large carnivorous lizard. So, like, he doesn't understand that he could bite me. He does not understand that. And I piss him off. I make that lizard really fucking mad. Because he's bad at shedding, so I'll have to help him, and he hates it. But he's never tried to bite anybody defensively. He's never tried to tail whip defensively, which is what they normally would do. And I think that's because he was just handled a lot when he was young. And I bet if you did that with a gator, you might be able to get him to a similar point, because he can be around dogs and he doesn't care. He can be around a lot of things and he doesn't care or see them as food. And then there's things that he does see as food that are not, like my flip-flops. For some reason, he's really into attacking those, and they have little bite marks all around the edge now. But I bet you could totally do it.
I wonder if you had, like, if the dog was more of, like, the, you know, I don't know, like the parent of sorts, like raising, right? It would be like that kind of relationship where it's like, oh no, I have this, like, kinship where I love it so much that, like, I can't eat it.
Well, the problem with that is that reptiles generally don't have parental care, so that wouldn't be a thing you could, like, sub in a different animal for, because they don't have that at all. There's some species of frogs that are actually great parents, but that's a little bit different than a crocodile. And crocodiles actually are really good parents too. You know what? But then you have to train. So like crocodile moms or gator moms will carry their babies around their mouth. So I'm like, okay, so what if you trained your dog to very gently cart around a tiny alligator? Maybe if you were able to start there, then you might be onto something, actually.
I'll keep my wheels turning.
I don't think it's impossible, and therefore it is fun thinking about.
Yeah, I wonder if it's been experimented with in some part of the world. I mean, I would imagine there's got to be a place, a reserve, or just somewhere where there's dogs always chilling around, and the reptiles are used to it, and it's not. They don't look at them as dinner.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure that is a thing that has to exist.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But intentionally, with the purpose of the experiment of, like, for the duration of the dog's life, in particular, since they live much less time on this earth, there's no rifts, there's no friction between the two species. That would be really interesting to see. But anyway.
Well, if all else kind of fails, I'd be interested if you took in all these animals and had your own zoo show at your house. So I'm just throwing that out there. Like, last resort, I think you would be a wonderful host.
Did you watch Tiger King?
No, I didn't.
I mean, I'm not.
I don't watch anything. To be fair,
Fair enough.
I don't watch anything. So that wasn't an unusual thing to not watch. But also, I just as a person who's worked in zoos and aquariums, I get really stressed out anytime a piece of media gets put out that portrays a quote unquote zoo, even though this place hella does not fucking qualify as an actual zoo. Anytime a zoo is being portrayed in a way that is less than the level of excellence that I'm used to in zoo and aquarium environments. And that gets really frustrating for me because there's this public idea that oh, zoos are evil and blah, blah, blah. And it's no, actual legitimate ones are incredible and do amazing things for conservation and keeping endangered species from falling off the face of the earth and educating the public. And also have really stringent care requirements that and get inspected all the time. And so those zoos and places are usually because they're AZA accredited, which is the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. So they're not AZA accredited. They are not subject to that kind of scrutiny. So then you end up with Tiger King places.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah, that was just, it stressed me out so much because I was oh no, is this going to turn into the next wave of abolish zoos? It's no, zoos aren't they're not like that. I swear, guys, it's not fucking like that.
Yeah. Well, that's why I asked. That's why I was asking. I was curious if it affected you in that way, being a champion of the proper facilities versus the kinds of things you're seeing in these shows. Yeah, I was just curious. But I think you answered my question without even needing to watch it. It's pretty obvious, the vast difference between the two types of institutions. So.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and this is something I try to impress upon people. The zoo and aquarium industry is so impossibly competitive that the people who are getting to work at AZA institutions are it is the best of the best. You're not getting people who are just coming in just to want to mess around with the tigers or some shit. You get people we treat the animals like they're our children.
Right.
And our responsibility. And it's you want to give them the best lives possible. And that's one of the reasons I'm pretty comfortable working specifically with reptiles because bar none, captive reptiles have longer lifespans than wild ones, period. That's not negotiable. That isn't always the case with some mammal species. There's a lot of that do better in the wild, but at the very least with reptiles and amphibians and invertebrates, they have better lives in captivity. They just do. That's not to say take them out of the wild, because don't do that. They need to stay there. And virtually all animals that you see in zoos are captive bred. No one's going out and picking up a tiger to bring it to the Central Park Zoo or some shit. That's not a thing. All of these are captive bred programs. But yeah, those are your kids. Those are your babies.
As it should be.
Yeah. Well, look, I can confidently say or even declare, Lauren, that within the chocolate croissants community, you are our animal and reptile expert within this community. So,
I'm honored. Honestly.
Yeah, there's no one else I would rather ask their opinion on something like Tiger King. To be honest, you're the perfect guest. So to be mindful of time, we have just a couple of minutes. Lauren, you have a record coming out July 10th. It's called Transitional Forms. The band is Sharptooth. Let me ask you, can you sum up the spirit or the energy of this record, the message of this record in a couple words? If you want anyone to experience it and take a few things away from it, what seems most articulate for you?
I think that the two words that probably sum this record up are that it is a call for empathy, and it is a implores the audience to embrace nuance and embrace like the gray areas and everything. I feel like we live in a world where people want to make everything black and white, and it never is. It just literally never is. And I think until people get a little bit more comfortable with that, we're going to continue to have a lot of the problems that we've like had in our communities for years and years and years. So that's, I feel like, what the record is really about. And embracing whatever unconventional or conventional methods you need to get right with your head. So yeah, it is a mental health journey and an empathy journey. So
awesome.
That's how I feel about the record.
Well, much respect for you championing those things. You see or hear the word empathy more often in the culture, which is a wonderful thing. But I love that you're bringing up this idea of nuance. I think much of our thinking is black or white or all or nothing, and it's lazy. It's just fucking lazy. It's at worst it's destructive and harmful. But it's also just lazy. I think critical thinking, critical analysis is so important, and to understand that there's nuance to most things. That's so important. And in order to, I think, develop that skill, you need to have empathy so you can understand various perspectives a bit more objectively from your own subjective point of view. I think, Justin, you're good? Do you have anything you want to say?
Sure. I'll quickly say that we one day we came home, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lauren, we found a tortoise in our front yard. And you know, I had to like really sit back and think, and I was like, well, I mean, I only know one herpetologist, so.
I remember when you texted, you called me. You were like, what do I do?
Right. So I did what anybody would do, right? I called like the local wildlife authority, who didn't answer the phone, and I kind of, you know, in a 2-second Google search realized that like, well, no one's probably going to come help the tortoise in the front yard, right? Like a children's book. So I took it upon myself. I called my favorite herpetologist, Miss Lauren over here. I was instructed to give it leafy greens, you know, and luckily those power greens in the fridge paid off, and we put her in a nice box with some greens and some water, and the worlds came together on Facebook. Shout out to Facebook, where someone then came who had like a tortoise reserve, or I don't know, like a whole tortoise land in their house. Yeah. So this guy came over, picked her up, told me it was a female. That was wonderful, you know, and she lived, and I see pictures now where she's like with all these other tortoises, you know, during the wintertime in the basement doing her thing with all like the proper necessities, and then outside with water and ponds and whatever. So yeah, so thank you.
I love it. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Like, there a lot of people would go like be in that situation and go, "Not my problem," which I think is one of the biggest problems with people, is that if like another living being needs help, it should be your problem, because like that's just how life works.
Yeah, more empathy.
Yeah, I
more
felt
empathy
responsible
for others and for everything that exists.
Yeah.
Yes.
We are all connected, truly, even if we can't see it or touch it. Look, it took us a little while to make this happen. I'm so glad we did. Lauren, I'm glad that you and Matt were able to connect in this way as well.
Yeah.
And
we did it.
yeah, and I'm super excited for this record to come out, amongst all the other things that you have going on amidst a global pandemic. So thank you, Lauren. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was great. This was really fun. It was really great talking to you all.
Hell yeah. If you're listening, facebook.com/groups/chocolate croissants. Meet us there. You can watch this if you're listening to it on your podcast app on youtube.com/chocolate croissants. Lauren is the vocalist of Sharptooth. Her album Transitional Forms comes out July 10th. It's July 1st when we're having this conversation, so it may even be out by now. My name is Jordan Goodman. On July 1st, 2020, I'm just so grateful that Beavis and Butthead is coming back. And with that, I want to say, be kind to yourself and listen to these bells, listen to this cowbell, and listen to these actual cowbells. And then I'm going to say, bye-bye.